Ya lo hace. Pierna derecha, directo al arco. ¡Golazo! ¡Golazo!
The world of football with a soccer perspective. This is Soccer Today with Duane, Rollins and Kevin Laramee, live on the Sports Podcasting Network.
And good day, good night. Welcome to Soccer Today for November 15th, 2017. A few important games yesterday, Duane, in the World Cup qualifying for Russia. I spent the afternoon kind of wanting to watch something fun, kind of having my heart into it and having it crushed. But before we talk about Ireland and Denmark, Aussie.
Oi, oi, oi.
Bye-bye, Honduras.
As I've said before, I am not really #FH. I'll play along for the joke, but I have nothing against Honduras. They beat us fair and square all those times, and they're annoying to play. And I really, really, really hope we don't draw them in the next World Cup round. That's what I'll say about that. But congratulations to Australia.
So all the technology, all the gimmicks and the lights and the glasses and the pants and the hundreds of thousands of dollars of recuperating and recovery technology in the plane, I guess, was worth 3 goals.
Yeah, you know what? I'm going to go so far to say as it probably mattered. That's such a long trip, and we'll see. And the double whammy for if you're the Houston Dynamo, you've got to be a little frightened because they, of course, have a couple Hondurans on that played significant roles on the Dynamo. It's for their playoff, and they've got to fly all the way back now too. So that's a tough one for them. When we talk about last playoffs, but
Bonin Garcia and I forget the other one.
Yeah, it's tough for them regardless. And Honduras misses its first World Cup in 2. A good run for them, obviously a golden generation. We don't need to really belabor that here in Canada. Those that follow the Canadian national team know that very well. Have had them in front of them the whole time. So, they miss out this time, but they get that close. Not going to lie, I'd almost, as much as it's bittersweet to lose this close, it's at least you got to play this late into the cycle, and that's a good thing too. And I'd almost, at this point in time, I'd take that too.
We'll take a hex, We'll take a hex once in a while.
I take TNT, one big game in the hex.
Yeah,
right?
just give me a playoff and the winner goes to the World Cup. I would love that. We actually never even get that far as Canada. But let's talk about Denmark and Ireland. 6 minutes. Duffy scores off a free kick and a header in the box to open up the scoring for Ireland. And Ireland's winning 1-0 at home. Fans are going crazy in Dublin. Then there's 3 minutes of doom, and then Christian Eriksen decided otherwise. Denmark 5, Ireland 1.
There's score effect going on there for sure. I watched this game, most of this game. I was watching the U.S. as well. We'll touch on that real quick after this, I guess. But
that goal, Arvath with the spill, 5-0.
Yeah,
come on.
Tell me how that was Jose. Tell me how that was Josie Altidor's fault, American fans. I just can't figure that one. I'm sure there's a way you could write an essay about that. But no, back to Ireland, Denmark. Look, those are very similar match teams, but the difference was Eriksen, right? And he broke it open in that 3-minute stretch there, stretching out with that beautiful goal to make it 2-1, which essentially, what is the goal that puts them out?
Yeah. Just the first goal was the goal that eliminated Ireland.
Well, yeah,
that goal that bounced off the post and bounced off the players and found its way to just pass that white line. Then it's 1-1 and the away goal rule.
Yeah, and the heartbreak there. And then 2 minutes later with a beautiful counterattack goal, top corner, great shot to that one. That was that's Eriksen, that's the skill. So when you're trying to handicap teams, soccer is a team game and all that sort of jazz, but the team with the best player often wins, which is, something we've talked about on the MLS side of things with Javinko, and certainly I think with Eriksen yesterday in Denmark, that's that. It's a victory. We talked about all these teams going out to, Denmark hasn't been in a while. It's a nice, interesting team with a star player. That's going to be a dark horse, I would say, next year in the World Cup. Not necessarily to win it or something like that, but a dark horse to maybe go to a quarterfinal or something. That's a decent side there.
They remind me a lot of of Poland. And it's not just because of the red and white color, but I think the way the team kind of is built around the star player. Poland is built around Lewandowski, and literally trying to get him to take this team to new heights. I think a bit of Denmark reminds me of a Poland, reminds me of a Sweden Zlatan era, where you do have one player that's like a Wales. Wales didn't qualify for this World Cup, and I would put Denmark ahead of Wales in their project. But you're right. It does feel like this team is built around Christian Eriksen. Not just they just don't need him to perform at a high level, but when he does, he brings that difference that makes Denmark maybe be able to punch a bit above their weight.
Precisely. And I think there's a lot more than just him there, too. I think this is a team that's well-oiled right now and is playing quite well. 3 Nordic countries qualify for the first World Cup ever, too.
Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. Iceland. Oh, yeah, Iceland. Oh.
Yeah, don't forget about Iceland there. They're a Nordic country. But nonetheless, that's kind of an interesting sort of thing. And again, a shifting of the game. Maybe that speaks to I think what that does speak to, if I don't want to read too much into stuff like this sometimes, but I think what it can speak to when you're seeing countries like that, in regions like that successful, whereas you see other regions like we talked about yesterday that are slipping down a little bit from their traditional high points, just as the spread of the game and the spread of tactics and understanding of tactics and having how the biggest clubs in the world are getting the biggest players from regardless of where they are and exposing them to the highest levels of the game more than they have in the past. I think that's all part of this that I think is shrinking the world's game and making countries like Denmark step up and be competitive, like Iceland, and we know what's happening there, and Belgium and countries like that are just becoming more and more increasingly competitive within this game.
And one more thing, Duane, when you look at Iceland, and there's going to be, if there is not already, there's going to be a book written about how Iceland, the rise of Icelandic football, how investment at the young coach levels were able to bring this nation of 300,000 souls to the World Cup and to the Euros and to get out of the group stage and to be efficient. And I think the blueprint and how they did it will be replicated in a lot of different countries. And if Iceland and Denmark can do it, why there's Canada or Australia or other India or countries with resources, especially with a lot of players and some resources, there's no more mentality which is, oh, we're not big enough, oh, we're too small. I think it's changing. I think it's not about that anymore. It's about, well, if you really want to do it, do what you need to. Wait 10 years, get the right coaches at the right spot, and get to that level.
No, precisely. And look, the Iceland model is not going to be possible for every country in the world to follow. I think in many ways, the smallness of Iceland is what allowed them to succeed and to excel and what was a very ambitious project because they could get everyone pulling in the same direction. If you're an American out there, Canadian, we talk about Canada's issues we have for years. So let's stick to the States. I think there's a lot of Americans out there that'll listen to us that will be, oh yeah, we should just do what Iceland does. Well, that's going to be difficult to do because Iceland doesn't have, 300 million people with, 60 million of which are interested in the game and are pulling it in 60 different directions. Iceland had 300,000 people, most of them all interested in the game, so you didn't have any sort of resistance towards elite level competition going on, which you do in countries like the United States, and they all sort of got behind an idea, which was to build infrastructure and to get the sort of high level coaching going. That's a very simple way to put the Iceland plan, but nonetheless, it's kind of in essence what it was.
It's in two phases, right? The Icelandic plan, if we don't break it down and make it like in layman's terms, it was two things: develop great coaches, great minds, that would in turn develop great players. And you see the rise of the Sigurdsson and company. They were created by great development and great coach and sending them abroad when it was time and getting them the experience in different academies around Europe. And you saw the result. You see the result now.
And free to play too. That's the other aspect to
True.
That, which sort of speaks to the infrastructure side of things. They just get players playing, and that's maybe the one thing that the U.S. will look at on the Iceland model, and Canada too as well to a lesser extent, I think, but certainly there as well. They want to just get kids playing the game more. But again, it's so different, the world in different spots, that you have in Iceland you don't have high school basketball pulling kids away from the game, right? So it's not as simple as just saying let's do Iceland, but nonetheless, there is models out there that I think can be successful if you're creative and if you're able to look and take a hard look at your own system and make the changes needed. I think any country in the world, it's clear Now there's no excuse out there that you can produce a world-class player anywhere. And once you have a world-class player and once you have a system in place, you can produce a team that can compete at a World Cup. And as I said yesterday, and Kevin, maybe I'll throw a question at you out of the blue here. And we've got a lot of time to think about the question I'm going to throw at you, but we'll get you sort of your initial off the top of your head reaction in a second. But I'm wondering how close we are to a day when truly you enter a World Cup and you look at countries like a Belgium and you go, well, maybe they could win it. Not necessarily maybe they can go deep, but maybe they could win it. And I'm not sure we're quite there yet, but hopefully we do, because that would be, as fun as we like World Cups right now, it really is sort of restricted to a very small little club that wins them at the end.
If you're not Spain or Germany, what are the chances of you winning the World Cup? Even France would be considered an underdog right now to win a World Cup with the great squad of young players they have.
For sure. In fact, yeah, they absolutely are. But I'm going to throw this at you. And right now, I mean, we've got a long ways to go, and there can be a lot of factors and injuries and all that sort of stuff can happen. We all know all but one team that's going to be in this World Cup, and that one team that we don't know is either New Zealand or Peru. That will be decided tonight at 9:30 Eastern time, I believe it'll start. So I don't think Peru or New Zealand are either going to be one of the answers to what this question would be anyway. But if you have to throw out every former winner that's in this tournament, and I'm also going to toss Belgium out because that's an easy go-to pick. Name me one team that you think that has the chance to win this thing.
Well, I was going to say Belgium. So now that takes it out of the question. When you look at other teams, like teams that are, dare I say, like in England, it'll be difficult. But it's a team where, what do we say on the club side?
Four winners there. You got to throw them out.
Oh yeah, it's true. Long time ago. But yeah, no. So, oh wow, like, interesting. It's hard for me to say it. Did Mexico ever win the World Cup?
No,
because they're not there yet. But if everybody else is out, why not? But is it time where we'll see the new rise of like some European countries, like Portugal? I don't think they ever won the World Cup, did they?
No, they have not.
Well, they can be close. Like it's. Well, you win the Euro, you're kind of close to winning the World Cup. So if you threw Germany and company out, you're left with Portugal.
All right, fair enough. They did win that former tournament, 1-1 draw with the United States yesterday. Maybe after the break we'll talk a bit about that and that stupid tournament idea. But
well, let's finish with the national team and that tournament idea now.
Well, I want to answer quick. I'll give you my answer.
Okay.
My answer is Croatia. They didn't have the best World Cup qualifying campaign, but that sort of speaks to the idea that I have. They have Modric. They have the world-class player there. I think that's your country that could jump up and get it done. But nonetheless, it's going to be an interesting World Cup, Kevin. You go ahead. Sorry to interject there.
That tournament, the United States are not in the World Cup next year, and they're wondering what they can do during that time period to maybe make some money, to maybe make some football games. It'll never happen. The FIFA will never sanction a tournament during the World Cup, will they?
Well, okay, by statute, you can't play friendlies during the World Cup. That includes like women's friendlies, for God's sakes, or youth friendlies. You can't do anything during the FIFA World Cup that FIFA will sanction because they want all of the world's attention on that World Cup. And as much as people that are fans of Italy and the United States and Holland and countries like that have failed to get there.
Let's not forget Canada. Let's not forget us.
Well,
we didn't qualify as well, okay? We're part of that group.
That's true, but no one's talking about us. As much as they think that the world's revolving around them, anyone that sort of is abdicating for this NIT sort of idea, for those that don't know, if there's any European listeners out there or people that are new to North America, the NIT is a basketball tournament that, I don't know if it still goes on or not, but it was a basketball tournament anyway that went on at the same time as the NCAA basketball tournament here in the United States. Jesus, that's a Freudian slip. In the United States, the NCAA March Madness basketball tournament, the NIT used to go coincide with it to sort of give bigger schools that didn't make it an opportunity to play a few more games to make a little bit of money on the side. I'm not even sure if it still goes on, to be honest with you, but that's the idea. No, Kevin, you cannot play games during the World Cup. So if they were going to have a tournament like this, which for the record is a ridiculous idea because who is going to care about the damn thing? It's a money grab in every its way, and I don't even know if it would work because who wants to pay the fees that they would be charging to try and play? Well, I suppose there's a soccer born every minute. But the only time you'd have to play it, Kevin, would be between May 21st and June 13th, because that is the window when you can play friendlies. Can you have a tournament of any substance in 3 weeks immediately after a European season squeezed in before the World Cup starts that anyone will care about?
Who would insure that tournament? Is there any insurance company to be like, oh yeah, okay, it's a small tournament, but with big names, we'll insure you to make sure there's no players injured? Yeah, the likelihood of a tournament like this just happening is, I don't want to say non-existent, but it's small.
Now, if such a tournament happens, Kevin, I won't even give it the dignity to call it a tournament when we're on this show. We'll maybe talk about it in friendly terms. That's what that would be. It would just basically be organizing friendlies against teams that hadn't qualified for the World Cup that happened to be all in the same place, and they would give some plastic trinket out at the end of it. It would not be anything worth talking about beyond the idea of friendlies. And I'll say this is what I think happened yesterday with this damn thing, because every journalist worth its salt in the United States was floating it out there, because obviously someone was feeding them this. It was a trial balloon. And it was a trial balloon that was getting ridiculed pretty quickly and was falling pretty fast. And I think that will probably be the end of the damn thing, because I don't think anyone has any stomach for it, really. All right. That's my thoughts on that, Kevin. I watched the U.S. game, too. I don't know why you do straight shot today, too, or do you want to
take a quick break and we'll come back. But let's finish your thoughts on national teams, and we'll come back and talk about clubs.
Oh, sorry. Yes. We're smooth today. No, I watched the U.S. game as well. U.S. Portugal, obviously the young lineup there. All anyone really wanted to talk about yesterday was the fact that Bruce Arena was on the Fox broadcast.
Oh, geez, that was something. Bruce Arena, the coach, just got fired. Does the commentating of their next match on TV.
Too soon.
Not just too soon. It was kind of awkward, inappropriate. Would inappropriate work?
Well, a lot of people were rubbed the wrong way by it, and there was a particular comment that he made during the broadcast. I forget who was it, asked Arena whether there was any missed talent that was out there that the U.S. sort of had not been able to identify in their search to try and make them as strong as they possibly could be in terms of player selection. And his response was, no, we got it all, which is in many ways, maybe he's right, maybe. I doubt it. I think that if you go back to far enough in the American chain, there's lots of players that get bypassed at certain points that would have contributed. Maybe when you get to the very, very top, they are selecting their best lineup, because at that point, it's already shaken out. But that's a very nuanced question that he was asked that was given a very flippant answer, which is Bruce Arena in a nutshell. He doesn't reflect on anything that challenges him, because his arrogance is such. And I think that's what that answer spoke to, is the arrogance that existed amongst the American program for years and years and years. It still exists right now, for God's sakes. And I know that I'm not talking to the fans necessarily when I say this, but you look at the reaction to not qualifying and sort of this aghast sort of idea that how can the World Cup possibly go on without the United States? And the reality is that the World Cup is a hell of a lot bigger than the U.S. men's national team. And no one in the world outside of the United States gives a rat's what that the U.S. isn't going to be there. And the fact that the U.S. a lot of people in American soccer, and again, I'm not talking directly to you, listener, because you're listening to us, and that suggests to me that you have an outside perspective and like to consider people's perspectives from outside. But there is sort of a an exceptionalism, an insular look within American soccer culture that I think prevents them from seeing just the level of arrogance that was there. The idea that they couldn't qualify was something that was not even within the framework. And, well, here we are. So I think the first step in fixing the U.S. soccer is understanding that U.S. soccer is not close to the top of the world yet, and there is a lot of work that needs to happen to get it there. The resources are there to one day get there, but right now they are not firing anywhere close to all cylinders, and they're not anywhere close to the top of the world.
No, absolutely. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we talked about the countryside. Now we're going to the club side.
You are listening to Soccer Today. Follow us on Twitter at Soccer Today SPN and like our Facebook page, facebook.com/Sports Podcasting Network.
Duane, I was talking about on the show yesterday about possibilities of clubs for Mark Dos Santos, maybe the hottest North American free agent coach as of right now. Maybe Gio Savarese could be touted as another hot one. But MDS, yesterday I was talking about, maybe Rochester, but there's a new development that happened after that. First of all, Bob Lilly, no more the coach of the Rochester Rhinos. He has accepted the position with the Pittsburgh Riverhounds in the USL as well. So in my mind, it left a position open. It's close to home. It's the closest USL market to Montreal outside of Ottawa. But apparently, financially, it's not going well in Rochester. There's a press conference announced to talk about the future of professional soccer in Rochester. It's not necessarily good vibes. And, well, as much as I would not have been surprised to see MDS land in Rochester, the more and more I look at other situation, maybe Mark will be somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I hope the Rhinos can figure it out, but there is a lot of sort of bad vibes there. And the press conference, which is scheduled for later this afternoon, is not going to, from anything I can tell, I've talked to a few people yesterday, it isn't going to say they're going to be folding or something, but I think what it is going to announce what needs to happen for them to continue. And there's a lot of problems there. And that would be a terribly sad day if the Rochester Rhinos were to move away. One of the oldest still standing, I think they are amongst, they might be the oldest, if not it's FC North Carolina now is the oldest. It used to be the Railhawks there, but I think that they're number two. For sure. We saw the battery go away a couple years ago, or at least fall down level. Hopefully the Rhinos, if they can't continue on at USL, can at least continue on at a PDL level or something, so the name can live on, because North American soccer history is a weird one, and there's not a lot of clubs that can trace their roots back beyond the 90s right now, and this is one that can go at least to the early 90s. So hopefully they can figure it out. But yeah, in terms of MDS,
when Rochester decided to be a little bit more gentle and stop being raging, they've been having problems since then. Let's not forget, they won the USL Cup in 2015. That's not too long ago, and we hope the best for Rochester.
Yeah, they certainly. It was in 1999 when they won the U.S. Open Cup. But
the only non-MLS team to win the U.S. Open Cup since the advent of MLS. So.
Yeah, exactly. So that was when Pat Onstad, the Canadian international keeper for years and years and years, was a key part of that team. That's a lot of Canadian fans followed that very closely back in the early Voyageurs days. That was a club that was followed very, very, very closely, as I said, because of Onstad. So, we have good vibes for them. In terms of MDS, though, there is some speculation out there. People talked about Cincinnati as a possibility, and they made some stadium announcements yesterday, but I don't think that one is it. There was another team that was announced, and
just a few days ago, Atlanta United announced it will have a USL team. It wasn't branded Atlanta 2. It's just saying that there will be a USL team in Atlanta, and Atlanta United will be the owners.
Yeah, and look, I wonder where, obviously there's a couple factors going on there. The Silverbacks are trying to get back going, and maybe Atlanta looks at that as an opportunity to try and crush any competition in the market out. That's not going to go over well in this current vibe of American soccer there, but unfortunately for Silverback fans, there's not a lot of you. So, you're going to have to rise up pretty quick to get that. It would be, ideally it would be lovely if those groups could work together somehow. I have doubts about this because the people that are behind the Silverbacks revival plans are anti-MLSers, but that name has a bit of a history in the market. So if you could continue with that on, that would be something that would be nice, but maybe I'm dreaming in Technicolor there.
Maybe you don't want to use the name of a failed entity as well for a brand new project. It's always a risk.
I really lean towards the more I like because there's always someone out there in the market. Like the same thing happened here in Toronto, for instance, when TFC started. There was a big resistance amongst a portion of the emerging fan base to not call them the Blizzard. I was very much on the other side. I thought that they should tap into that history. People said, but it failed, and then I'd point out it didn't technically fail. The league failed, but that's a debate for a different day.
It's not the club this time around. It's the actual league in '84 that failed after the Soccer Bowl in Toronto.
Yes, exactly. The Blizzard are one of 3 teams that literally did not fail in NASL, something that the people don't realize. The Whitecaps were one of the other ones. So two of the 3 teams standing at the end of the
And
NASL
the Sting, right?
originally
It was
were
the
teams.
Chicago
Yeah,
Sting.
Chicago, Toronto, and Vancouver were the only 3 teams that didn't fold because the Cosmos actually did fold at the end. So there you go. So I'm of 2 minds of that. Yeah, I understand where people are coming from, but I kind of like that history nod. But regardless, the other option too that a lot of teams seem to be going to is the different city approach, and I get that one too. I increasingly think that here for TFC that maybe moving TFC2, they're going downtown for next year, but if that one doesn't work, then maybe you should look at a Kitchener-Waterloo or something like that to try and have
London
that
or something.
market vibe going on there. Kitchener-Waterloo, for those who don't know, is about an hour outside of Toronto, and it is a city of 1 million people itself. So that would work there. Savannah maybe with Atlanta, something like that would be interesting for them, or Athens, close but not exactly there.
Well, the ownership group at least would fit the criteria that MDS mentioned in different platforms over the last few weeks, where he mentioned job security, he mentioned getting closer to home. Yeah, technically Atlanta is not close per se to Montreal and his family, but it's closer. Like, it's closer than San Francisco. Talking about just a few hours flight outside of 7 or 8, depending on which flight you're taking. So it is kind of closer
too.
I'm sorry?
Right? So it's a very simple flight.
Yeah, it's a direct flight from anywhere. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. I don't know how many directs go from Montreal, but there's certainly a ton of directs.
There's one daily, I believe.
Yeah, and there's tons that go to Toronto, like probably 3 or 4 a day. So, to get, not that Toronto's where his home is, but it's close enough, right? That it's an easy train ride or something from there.
It's an easy flight from Montreal to Toronto. It's 45 minutes. So yeah.
Yeah. So you do one connection if you need to get home quickly. Certainly there's a lot of interest there. And the other part we've sort of talked about before is how many head coaches would be terrified to have MDS behind them. Well, I can think of one who wouldn't, Kevin.
Yeah, Tata Martino would be like, MDS, Martos Santos. I don't know him. I will help him. Yes, he could be a good coach down the line. I don't know him, and I do not feel him breathing down my neck.
Yes, exactly. And he's going to move on eventually too. So there's a lot. The more you think about it, the more that kind of hire makes sense. The other thing that would really be appealing to Atlanta, I'm sure, is they look at MDS as history. 3 consecutive finals.
Yeah, but he has some Brazil experience too, so he's kind of like the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and he'd have contacts in Brazil too to help with young players down there. And
here's an idea. We will know where MDS is going, and that's somebody's Twitter post yesterday. And sorry for stealing it, but it's true. Wherever Romero Pezar signs, wherever Tom Heineman signs, guess what? That's where MDS is going.
Yeah, Tom Heineman, the honorary. There's a lot of Fury fans out there that were really hoping that he would come back, but I think Julian's going to be the go there for next year on that one too. I haven't heard anything to counteract otherwise. But Atlanta would be, for those that want to see MDS excel at the highest level and maybe get a shot at MLS, I think that Atlanta would be a great fit for him to go into that 2 slot. As I said, the current coach will not be there forever, and this is an opportunity for him to be in an organization that has shown that will think outside the lines. Certainly, it has it has a lot so far. It hasn't built the team in a traditional way. It's shown that it will spend money, and it will shown that it will give people a chance that maybe people don't necessarily look at normally, as I said. So I think that this would, for those that want to see MDS get an MLS shot, this might be his best opportunity to do so outside of joining an expansion team that's coming in.
Well, yeah, and exactly. And we all know the expansion team next year, it's LAFC. They already have a coach, Bob Bradley. And there's already a plan. December 12th will be the beginning of the expansion process, the expansion draft for LAFC. Another off-season with an expansion draft. Duane, I think we better get used to it. I think it's going to be a few years back to back where we get expansion drafts.
I hate them. They don't need to happen in MLS. It's a global market. This is not like you're expanding in MLB or NFL where you have, a smaller market of players, and you need to make sure that your team is competitive. There is literally no reason why they can't just give them a few extra allocation dollars and they'd all be happier. But MLS likes to keep things nice and tight and parity and have an expansion draft and have an event and blah blah blah.
What's better, an expansion draft or give expansion teams like 2 more international slots and about 200,000 more of Gam and Tam?
I guarantee that they'll be better and more competitive out of the gate if you do the latter. And maybe that's why they're not doing it this way. But you saw what Atlanta did with it last year. There's a couple players that stuck around, but they were wheeling and dealing right from the get-go.
Yeah, well, and yes, Larentovich made a big difference. He brought that MLF lifer experience that they needed. But it's about the Martinez, and it's about the Almiron, and it's about the Asada and company. So, no, it makes a lot of sense. And Duane
Sorry, go ahead. You can get, I'll just jump in real quickly. You can get those MLS lifers with the allocation. We've seen that with the trades right now. So just simply give them more allocation. And then if they want some guy on an MLS team, they can approach the MLS team and go, look, I'll give you this for him.
Take him. We'll take him. We'll get it off your salary cap. No, but I was going to say, we'll wrap the show up for today. There's one thing I wanted to talk about, but we don't have enough time remaining. We'll talk about it tomorrow and give us time to think about it. So I'll tease the listeners with this. Ambroise Oyongo, formerly of the Montreal Impact and the New York Red Bulls, has come to an agreement with Montpellier in Ligue R, former club of... I forget his name now, of course. But Montpellier won the league in early 2011, 2012. Big surprise. Anyways, Montpellier, a decent club in Ligue 1. I've signed Ambroise Oyongo for a free transfer. Oyongo is one of the best prospects and one of the best players over the last few years for the Montreal Impact and in MLS. Same for the New York Red Bulls. And was touted as a player with a lot of potential and with a lot of maybe... transfer money coming in when and if an MLS team would sell him, and that was part of the thinking by the Red Bulls as well. When they traded him to Montreal, they would have something to come back whenever Montreal would sell him. Well, they didn't. He's gone on a free transfer. Here's my question that I want everyone to think about it for a day. Could the Impact in Major League Soccer have handled the Oyongo case better to get something and not let him go free?
Well, I have my answer on that, but I'll wait for tomorrow, Kevin. So on that note, why don't you say goodbye?
Until tomorrow, with the answer to that question, have a great soccer.
You can find the podcast version of all the shows we do on iTunes, Apple Podcast, Google Play Store, TuneIn Radio, iHeartRadio, and anywhere you get your podcast.